to your brain, the infinite plane. The edge is in your mind. The edge is in your mind.
It's The Edge is in Your Mind by Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. It's 12/31/2021 still, and this is the final word on 2021. So if you have any grievances you want to air, or any comments, any final words on 2021, this would be the night. 833-311-1984, with joined by Thirst for Truth, Brogetta, The Missing, Restless Bear, Kevin 44. We're on DLive, YouTube, and Twitch, and a few others. Just go to infiniteplane.radio for a full list of all the places where we are live streaming. So let me first off go through a list of the topics that I wanted to touch on. Now, one of the main topics is 2021 in the context of this meta script, and 2021 in many ways being templated off of 1969, which we expected based on last year, 2020, being largely a repeat of 1968, which we'll go into detail about what that means and the observations we've made this year. I also want to point out that tonight at midnight, wherever you are, the dog star is at its highest point that it will reach in the year. So this countdown at midnight is actually worshiping the dog star, the god of the Masons and the Thelemites. Aleister Crowley said, "Is God to live in a dog?" And people thought, what is he talking about? I also want to point out that The Truman Show is about a guy who's a false man, living in a false world, until he sees the dog star falls from the sky in the form of the stage light representing Canis Majoris, and that's his first clue that his world is a farce, and then he becomes a true man. So The Truman Show is the story of your initiation, or man's initiation, his initiation, into the true nature of reality. So that's being celebrated tonight at midnight, just a heads up. I also want to talk about the movie Don't Look Up, and how it was predicted, more or less, or in many ways, there's some connections we can get to, with the C-19 Atlas comet. This is something we discussed in Discord this morning, all day actually. Don't Look Up. I also want to talk about Utopia, a TV show which I watched it all from start to finish yesterday. It is about everything we talk about here. Meta-scripted reality, psychological operations, crisis actors, viruses and vaxes, and the whole sales pitch on both sides, how it works. I mean, in that movie, the Bill Gates character, who happens to be inventing synthetic beef like Bill Gates doing, he creates a false flag flu contamination at his meat processing plant in order to hype up the need for a vaccine, which he has his hand in. So anyway, we'll talk about Utopia, and how the movie The 100 I've been talking about lately, and even The Wheel of Time, like these movies all have the same basic themes. And there are some themes that I want to point out, that they're all just, like for example, they're all post-reset. We'll start with that. It's all post-reset, with orphan trains from space, or little, like in Utopia, the guy creates an actual utopia, a little population that's like the seed population for the next phase, the arcs. And arcs are a major component in all of these TV shows. Why arcs? Well, because the chosen, the elect, are the ones who are going to be representing the human race when the rest of us are wiped out by the flood. Someone today asked me if I believe that history rhymes, as Mark Twain said, and I'm like, well, yeah, it literally rhymes. We're living through a modern flood myth, Noah, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Rhymes with Noah from the Bible, with the dove, and the Noah of today even uses the dove as a symbol. Now, the dove is a symbol of the post-reset. It's not peace. I mean, it's the peace of the graveyard, or the mass grave. It's kind of quiet, but I don't know if you want to call that peace. So the dove shows up at the ark after the flood to let Noah know that there's land. That's what the olive branch represents. So it's not a coincidence, if you ask me, that you had Lady Gaga with a dove with an olive branch on her chest when she sang the inauguration last year, meaning One, she's dressed like a character out of the Hunger Games, which uses a phoenix symbol holding an arrow. Same thing as the dove with the branch. But she was basically inaugurating this post-reset world. That's what that represented. Restless Bear says, Tim, I rode a horse and hurt my ass today. Rome says, Happy New Year's, everyone. Brogetta says, we need more penguin naughty NFTs. Yes, in fact, if you join InfinitePlaneSociety.com, the newsletter, I highly recommend it. Just get on any of these newsletters. I am going to start posting links to a lot of the NFTs, and they're also going into Fake World News. We are producing them. And a lot of the memes that we're creating are being put into print and into the blockchain because it's the best way to prevent them from being censored. All right, so let's go back into these topics here. 1969-2020. So these are just a few of the predictions you could say that came true. So last year it was the mass media that was framing everything in the context in which they want to place it. Where they're the ones who started off with this notion that 2020 was in many ways a repeat of 68. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there are characters in play on the world stage. There are stories that are being created that are intentionally conflating these 2 years. You know, even the term coronavirus was coined in 68. I mean, there's a number of things that we went through. And this is what really led me down this path of, okay, well, there's clearly a patterning, there's scripting. We can see the dates, the timing of things. I mean, look, some of this stuff is so precise, even Snopes has to concede that, yeah, in fact, there were 911 days between 9/11 and the 3/11 Madrid attacks in 2004. My point being, we started noting that there was a pattern that was being constructed, that this was being used as a narrative framework. And so I thought, well, if 68 mirrored 20, or 2020 was being mirrored, or templated rather, with 68, then 2021, if this is a reoccurring thing, maybe we're going to see some elements of 69. So in 69, you have the Manson killings, you have the space race. And so, again, looking at it from this framework, we were able to actually kind of figure, well, look, there's going to be a new space race. And sure enough, right when the year started, they started hyping up this to the moon. All the talk was about to the moon. Well, you know, to the moon. The whole space race was a race to the moon. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But this is all being said in the context of cryptocurrency. But it was started by one of the space popes, Pope Elon, who was like Dogecoin to the moon, Dogcoin. And again, this dog is a symbol, the dog star. These things might be, they reference dogs with these contexts, but you have to really consider what these things mean symbolically. In fact, you should look into this, and I guess I should now, since we should talk about Sirius. But I wanted to just get started on this topic about 1969, how the space race was already being predicted early in the year with this talk of to the moon. And then it became a literal space race, not only between the billionaires to see who would poke their heads into the heavens first, but also with the movie companies of Russia and America. So you had Tom Cruise with his movie to be filmed on the ISS, and he was racing with the Russians. And their movie was actually called The Challenge, which is very interesting for a few reasons. But I think considering the troubles the ISS has been having, and these premonitions, and like they're kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen with this thing, but it's like, come on, Challenger, challenge. It seemed a little close. But the space race narrative. But not only was it totally repeating history, but they actually had Bezos launch up on the 20th of July, which is the anniversary of the first man on the moon. And this is like the first foray into tourism for the masses. So now it's not just the billionaires going to space or the people with NASA, and now anybody can go. So it's like the first step, not Neil Armstrong on the moon, but is really the first foray into space tourism, and now they're doing business parks and hotels and all that. But also, Branson's launch of 9 days earlier on 7/11, he won the billionaire race. But 7/11 happens to be the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling. So these dates are all really interesting that they chose these dates. It's also probably noteworthy that Bezos launched at 9:11 a.m. 9/11 on the anniversary of Apollo 11. Well, those two events have the same director, in my opinion, Stanley Kubrick. And I say director loosely. I mean, we're talking about a group of people a group of directors, and he would be among the group, I would say, but I don't think he's a mastermind in all this. It's bigger than one director. So, in addition, 1969, I saw in the memosphere, all over Twitter, all over the social media, Marilyn Manson was blowing up for the reason of having tortured all of his ex-girlfriends in horrific ways. I read phrases like Nazi knife sex. I don't even know what that is. But again, we got Manson's in the news, and one of the women suing him is named Bianco. So Bianco. Well, interestingly enough, the Manson killings of '69, it was the Bianca, the Tate Bianca murders. So Manson versus Bianca. Now it's Bianco versus Manson. Kind of interesting, just A and the O, which may have some alpha omega connotations. If you want to dig into it, my point being, Manson was already being pushed into the news. And what's more, the person who brought him up was the 33-year-old Evan Wood, star of Westworld, a movie about simulations waking up, realizing that they're being horribly abused by their living captors. And her real life story with Marilyn Manson, in many ways, absolutely mirrors her character and the antagonist in Westworld, who's also dressed in black with the black cowboy hat, very Saturnian character, looks like Marilyn Manson in a few years, if you cut his hair. And I'm like, that's interesting. It's like the same type of relationship where she wakes up later to the abuse after she breaks the cycle and has a continuity and a memory. Whereas before the AI is selectively forgetting every night, this character begins to remember. Well, she sees Marilyn Manson on the stage with Kanye West at that Donde set, and she has flashbacks. Well, at that Donde release party, Marilyn Manson was standing in front of a church, a white church with a cross on top that Kanye had burned. And that is interesting in itself because that looks like the main set piece in Westworld. So Kanye West release party, Marilyn Manson in attendance, happens to look just like the Westworld set. So no wonder it reminded her. And I don't think these are coincidences. I mean, that church, that set that Kanye had burned, looked very similar to the Rust movie set where Alec Baldwin. Oh, one note where Alec Baldwin shot Joel Soez, or Souza. So yeah, this shooting of the director and of Halyna Hutchins, I want to bring something up about that really quick here. But my point being, Manson was in the news, so on the anniversary of the Manson killings, I said there's going to be something similar, but it's going to be reversed. It's going to come from the right. Some QAnoner. Because you know how Manson sent the killers? Well, in this case, Q sent the killer to go kill his kid and stab him 17 times with a spear in Mexico on the anniversary of the Manson killings. And there are many other connections, but I want to just point that out, that it was to the day we said there's going to be some commensurate atrocity coming from the opposite side. And the guy's initials are even the opposite of Charles Manson. CM. This guy, MC, Matthew Coleman. And again, the parallel here is, well, one, Beach Boys. Charles Manson, heavily associated with Beach Boys, even lived in Santa Barbara. Well, this guy taught classes on surfing. He lived in Santa Barbara, and he killed his Beach Boys. I mean, this story is like overlapping in certain key ways, specifically dates. The spear ties into it, but also the component of this person isn't guilty because they were listening to a cult leader. So it's a way of, you're blaming this mysterious Q. And this is all, of course, scripted and story. But we shouldn't be able to predict things so accurately, but we can because it is definitely templated. So the resurgence of this Charles Manson thing, the space race, these are two things that we're repeating from 1969. But really quick, let me get into this because we were talking about the Kanye West set with the church and how it looked like the Rust movie set. I was looking at this today. So Alec Baldwin is the world's #1, I think, greatest example of Trump derangement syndrome. He's super triggered by Trump. He impersonates Trump, or at least this is how he is on TV. So he's the guy who plays Trump on SNL. Well, one of the things he said about it was, he said, he detests Donald Trump so much that playing that role makes him wish for an asteroid to hit the White House. So Alec Baldwin says he wants an asteroid to hit the White House. So now, This guy, super deranged by Trump, is involved in a shooting, and the director he shoots, Joel Souza, is just coincidentally, he survives, but coincidentally, he has the same birthday as Donald Trump, 6/14. Now, the significance there, I just thought it was funny at first that a guy who hates Trump so much would shoot somebody with Trump's birthday. But no, there might be some more significance to it because, again, he said he wants Trump to be hit by a meteor. So I'm watching this movie, Don't Look Up, and they say, oh, the comet's going to hit the Earth in 6 months and 14 days. So that's 614, Trump, meteor. This is just a few examples, but I'm just pointing this out. It just kind of stood out to me, 614. And, there's an obsession with birth dates and death dates and all this stuff, and it's not coming from us. We're just pointing these things out. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence either that this is the 42nd year since Skylab fall, and now all of a sudden, all the talk is, when are they bringing the space station down? Then, of course, the space station is dodging space junk. That's never happened before. They've been up there for 20 some years, 22 years now. They say that there are tens of thousands of pieces of space junk, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. No, it wasn't a problem until they started putting it out on the news. So now this movie, Don't Look Up, and I noticed this back in February. I said there's a reason why they have Leonardo DiCaprio. There's some sort of subtext here, and it's this: Leonardo DiCaprio is the face of the Titanic. They use this as like a metaphor. The Earth is the Titanic, and global warming is the comet that's going to hit the Earth. It's the iceberg in this case. And so this big sky iceberg is going to take out the Earth, but we're not paying attention. That's the whole theme of the movie. And having the same face is, I think, driving that point home. And sure enough, after this movie is released, you have Neil deGrasse Tyson who says, oh, it's a documentary. And then they have Brian Cox coming out saying, well, if we listen to the scientists, this won't happen. The whole point of the movie is that the scientists were ignored in favor of some guy who looks like Steve Jobs, sort of, who wants to make money off of this comet. So the capitalists destroyed the Earth. That's really the bottom line. The capitalists destroyed the Earth. Space capitalism versus space communism. And that's why you have Jeff Bezos poking his cowboy hat above the Kármán line. The guy, well, they didn't go that high, but into space. The guy's not a cowboy. He's never ridden a horse, but he's got this cowboy hat to go into space because they're trying to convey space cowboys. This is the new frontier, is the Wild West. And the other side, the commies don't want that. It's not sustainable. But also think about that. It's the new frontier, and then we have Captain Kirk sent up into space by Bezos. So you have this space cowboy new frontier vision versus what China and Russia want, which is less of Musk, for sure. Less of these capitalists and their CubeSats, which are there to help us surf the internet faster and buy products more efficiently. All right, I'm going through some comments. Echo Charlie says they put him on People magazine. Is it all entertainment? You're talking about Matthew Coleman. I believe so. I think it is entertainment. I think it's like Gabby Petito. These are stories that are meant to tug your heartstrings. It's like, oh look, even this liberal left coast enclave can be reached by these pervasive right-wing memes that can turn even this innocent-looking surf instructor into a murderous MAGA. Now, if you look at the pictures, you will not find any proof that the guy was a MAGA whatsoever. Okay, check this out. This is from Futurama. Someone sent me this link.
Prepare to change course.
Sir, this is a leisure cruise. Our path was set by the travel agency.
That's for schoolgirls. Now here's a route with some chest hair.
But that course leads directly through a swarm of comets.
Yes, comets. The icebergs of the sky.
Comets, the icebergs of the sky. Okay, I see why they sent that to me. I appreciate that, whoever sent it. From Futurama, comets are the icebergs of the sky. And this is a reference to Don't Look Up, which is saying that the capitalists are going to kill us all because they are steering this big ship, spaceship Earth, this Titanic. They're steering it out there, entertaining everybody into oblivion. Meanwhile, they're not paying attention to the threats, aka global warming. Specifically, I think global warming, but really, global warming, as you all know, is just a front It's a front for the communist takeover, making capitalists feel guilty about buying stuff. Okay, listen, this is what Neil deGrasse Tyson actually tweeted. He said, I finally saw Don't Look Up on Netflix. Now, it's not a coincidence that this movie just came out, just now, that everybody's watching it right now. While, Christmas vacation, you're at home with your family, everybody's being inundated with imagery of stuff falling from the sky. This is what they did before 9/11. So, you're being prepared, or rather the masses of true believers are being prepared for the next spectacle. But Neil says, I finally saw on Netflix Don't Look Up, a fictional tale of a nation distracted by pop culture and divided on whether to heed the warnings of scientists. Everything I know about news cycles and talk shows and social media and politics tells me that the film was a documentary. So he calls it a documentary. So a couple things here. One, I mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio, the face of this movie, which is a parallel to the Titanic in many ways. But the other person, Jennifer Lawrence, is the face of the Reset, Hunger Games. And these characters are chosen advisedly because of the bigger archetypes they embody. But on that one, let's go ahead and bring up a couple pictures here. I had brought up I believe it's Mockingjay is the book cover where I saw this when it comes to the Hunger Games. And by the way, the author of the Hunger Games, Suzette Collins, is right out of Sandy Hook. So she's another Sandy Hooker. And it's worth noting, like the director, or rather one of the cinematographers, was the father of Elliot Rogers, one of these incel shooters, like the incel shooter in Denver, who wrote a book about what he was going to do first, by the way. Okay, so here we are looking at the cover art of this Hunger Games, and the same actress who's the face of Don't Look Up is the face of this post-reset stuff. And you have this bird holding an arrow. It's just another symbol of the phoenix. And the phoenix represents build back better after you burn it all down. Stylized phoenix, but it's a phoenix nonetheless. Just like the dove with the olive branch is not really a symbol of peace. It's a symbol of we killed you all. Now we're going to build back on your graves. Benton says, I missed you yesterday. I don't think we were on yesterday. Oh, I don't think so. Maybe we were. I've been working a lot behind the scenes, but after New Year's, I'm going back to my usual schedule of 48 hours a day. All right, let's see. Let me go ahead and open my phones too. 833-311-1984. Again, 833-311-1984. 311 is the date that 1984 started. We've been talking about Sirius and how this is a night for venerating and worshiping the energies of the dog star Sirius. So you're actually participating along with all the Illuminati and the secret society members, but they're wittingly worshiping whatever that thing is. The significance of the dog star, well, New Year's for us, January 1st, but also it marks the heliacal rising of Sirius over the sun in the summer, which is the Egyptian New Year. So you have these New Year references. I think that also the the Coptic calendar, New Year, September the 11th, which is very significant. Look up Bill Clinton, Sirius, 9/11. Okay, so on September the 11th, a dog named Sirius burned to death. It was like this sad story. It was a canine. Well, anyway, 1 year prior to the day, on September the 11th, year 2000, Bill Clinton was hanging out with this dog. And in the caption on the Polaroid film here that he gave to the dog's handler, he wrote down, Sirius is beautiful. Thank you for your service. 9/11/2000. So here you have 1 year prior to 9/11, which is the New Year's on that calendar, another New Year's Day. And he's hanging out with a dog named Sirius, which burns to death a year later in the towers. Just another unbelievable coincidence. But again, this is what they're worshiping tonight, and the ball dropping, I guess, in Times Square is the dog star. Echo says, games that involve death are depraved. Hunger Games, Roman Gladiator, wild animals tearing people apart. What about Grand Theft Auto? AKA the Democrat Party platform. Like, would you consider that to be death, kind of a death sport, blood sport? It certainly was. Nothing like the guided tour through the White House and the Capitol area, or the Capitol on 1/6. You know, the whole thing on 1/6 was so not a riot compared to what we saw that summer, where people were being run over, people were being beaten and shot. It wasn't all squibs and special effects like Kyle and Mr. Grossarm. I talked about this one too, another example of the mass mind being readied for something to happen, something big from above. So your next major psyop is already being telegraphed. Moonfall. So this movie called Moonfall is about the moon falling, the sky falling. So there's a pattern here. And I wanted to point this out. This being the 42nd year of Skylab falling, we did have that piece of Chinese space junk, 42,000 pounds, that they said, oh, it's going to land somewhere. If you're between 42 south and 42 north latitude, look up. You know, it's like this idea that you're going to be wearing space junk helmets. It started off as a joke. There's actually a movie called Skylab where people are wearing helmets. Well, it turns out 42 years ago, people did wear helmets for Skylab. It's kind of a joke. They had these helmet parties, but my point being, the number 42 is code. That's why it's used throughout Elon Musk's entire space program and all of his antics. That's why Bezos spent $42 million on a giant clock inside of a mountain. That number is pretty much associated with falling, things falling, blackouts. Just like the number 33 is associated with rising and the sun. So again, falling in Saturn, rising in the sun. These things are all code. I'm telling you, even CubeSat. Cube satellite. Well, beyond cube satellite, the cube is one of the main symbols of Saturn. Saturn, L is the other name for Saturn. So I'm suggesting here that this space program is actually the exoteric cover of Mystery Babylon. And they're worshiping this old paradigm, this old religious. It would seem archaic and out of place in the modern world. So, but whatever it is, the priesthood is in the know about what all these symbols and rites mean. That's why they time these things like 9/11, 33 years after the tower's built. I mean, we're living through a long, protracted group magical ritual for all intents and purposes. Looks like alchemy. But anyway, this is Moonfall. And what we're seeing here is how everyone in the world who watches TV is being prepared for stuff falling from the sky. And so it's been 42 years, and since that Skylab fell, and since this 42-year anniversary, we've had nothing but stuff falling. In fact, we've had 4 times the space station has had to dodge, and moreover, the space station was actually hit in the arm by a piece of space junk while they're testing out the efficacy of vaccines in space on a mission called Celestial Immunity. It's like, what do you mean, celestial immunity? They get vaxxed? Just pointing out how it's all theater. Now I'm looking, and it looks like they float more realistically than they do in the ISS. Just pointing that out. I think they're told, though, to kind of keep it kind of fake looking. Like in most movies, in fact, in every movie you'll see, except for like maybe Gravity in this one, whenever they're in the spacecraft, they tend, if it's in the future, they have artificial gravity. That you usually don't see people floating around except when NASA shows you. And I think that's something that they like to monopolize as much as possible so that there's no basis for comparison. Because it looks like here, it almost looks like they've made it intentionally look bad. Now again, I'm looking at Moonfall. Just another example of a movie where stuff falls from the sky. Yurt Mama says, all the elections are fixed, not just 2020. If anything, the stolen election is contrived. See, that makes perfect sense to me. And also the date, 11/3. So 11/3 you can look at as a date that split the nation in many ways. It's a schism, it's a crack. Certainly split the right. I mean, the country's already split on purpose, but a very divisive thing. And 11/3 was forecasted in many examples of predictive programming we could point to. 3/11, the reverse of it also, was which happens to be the starting date for the COVID thing. But anyway, 11/3 is the date that the One World Tower that replaced the Twin Towers opened. So they burned down the twins, and then they erect the single tower, which happens to look like a big vax needle. Not a coincidence if you think about the bigger agenda and the space needle thing, which, I mean, this, what we're seeing here is the entrance into the new age, which I think is pretty clear. It's what we're experiencing with this great reset. And they're the ones who time their stuff astrologically, and they're very obsessive about it, apparently. This whole thing has been timed with the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction of last year. So we're just looking at this. I think this is a something that was scheduled in advance. So it's not like any of this stuff happens on accident. It wasn't like they didn't know there was going to be a quote pandemic. Whether there's an actual virus or not doesn't even matter. Everybody just goes through the motions anyway. It's all just ritual. In fact, in that movie Utopia, let me bring this up really quick. The movie Utopia is a must-watch. I should have watched it a year ago. So the movie Utopia was canceled. Why? Probably because it said budget issues. Fascinating. Well, probably because it gave away too much. But it's a group of comic book enthusiasts who find out that the comic books have accurately predicted all of the major virus outbreaks. So to the point where it actually predicts the number of people dying. Like the stuff that we talk about all the time in movies. Whenever we talk about predictive programming, we're pointing to comics. We're pointing to movies and video games, etc. So here's a movie called Utopia where a group of individuals looking at these comics too closely figure it out. Oh, there's a script. And so they want to know what's in the final issue because they want to know what's coming next. What's the big psyop? Well, anyway, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but basically, they are in possession of some sensitive information and it results in them being hunted down. Sort of like how they want to ban YouTube channels and shadow ban people who have been exposed to certain memes. It's a meme quarantine. In fact, the movie has a quarantine in there. And so there's a lot of interesting overlaps here, though, between the world of the pandemic and the PSYOP entertainment complex. In fact, in the movie, they even use crisis actors playing like they're sick for the TV. And they explain behind the scenes, they show you behind the scenes, how they're manipulating the news with fake people. There's a scene in a newsroom where they're saying, okay, well, this person just died, give them a backstory. And they have people ready to answer the phone and pretend to be people who used to know that person. So everything we've talked about from deepfake to psyops, it's in this movie with the predictive programming and this interesting response where the people who see too much into the script are hunted down. Travis Claude says, Utopia is way too direct about the behind-the-scenes masters. Well, here's the thing. At the end of the movie, you find out that this Bill Gates-like character who's creating the synthetic meat does have a plan to depopulate the world with the vaccines. So the heroes of the story are the anti-vaxxers who actually destroy the vaccines before they can be distributed. So you can't have a movie or a series where anti-vaxxers are heroes and they're the ones who are smart enough to see what's going on. So I can see why they pulled it. They WTC7'd the whole series. And it's probably for that very reason. Like somebody didn't get the memo. It's like, hey, you got the plot wrong. Because they do take that level of creative control over things generally. So I'm surprised this one got out. Now what's more, you had crowds of people chanting, free the vax, and they're kneeling for the vaccine. Like, again, it just seems like, okay, the kneeling was a big thing with 2020. You know, from Derek Chauvin to Kaepernick's inspired kneeling, the BLM taking up kneeling, and then the sellout politicians. It's like, who are they kneeling to? To be honest, I knew from day one, they're not kneeling to anything other than this new crown. Novel corona, whatever it is, or whoever's wearing it. Could be Elvis for all we know. Vacuum Cleaner says, I predict Sir Elton John will die in 2022. Actually, it's just wishful thinking. A man can dream, can't he? Let's see here. Yeah, I guess I'll still take some predictions. Let me bring this up. Fake World News. Go to fakeworld.news. You can also get it at darkmatter.radio. Issue 2 is out. This magazine, tabloid rather, comes out twice a month. And this is the second issue. The first one's sold out, but I have restocked a few copies. So, fake world news is the hot sheets or the sheets, like you saw in the movie Men in Black, where Tommy Lee Jones grabs the tabloids off of the news kiosk to figure out what's really going on. And most of you here know that it's actually true that if you want to know what's really going on, you can't go directly to the liars. You have to be able to read between the lines. Doesn't mean you can remain ignorant about the lies that they are selling, but pretty much the tabloids in that movie are telling the truth in plain sight, and the public wouldn't know the difference. So, this one, issue 2, one of the main stories, there's a few on here, and I don't think it's controversial to say this anymore, but some people are still kind of on the fence about this, and I want to really, I think, put the nail in this coffin. Death Faker or Coincidental Connections? Is Bill Hicks alive and playing the role of Alex Jones? Let's just solve that once and for all, and I believe I have. What is the black pill? You know, I was already writing the story about the black pill and all the research we've done into the black pill community when the guy in Denver popped off. And that seems totally hoaxy. Apparently, he's even emailing or tweeting at it, rather, Mike Cernovich. Now, someone had to share that with me because Mike Cernovich blocked me on Twitter. I wasn't able to see. But anyway, you have this high-profile alt-media figure in close proximity to an alt-right shooter who looks like the Giga Chad meme. Seems a little too constructed and fake for me. Another article here, gang stalked by flat earth cultists. This is an exclusive. Behind the Perv, the Flat Earth Pizzagate exposed. Netflix famous flat earthers of Behind the Curve exposed by comedian Jake Gibson. So that's a very convoluted and complex story, and it's a deep story, and it's real. But it needs to be broken down so that people can grasp it in its most basic elements. What are we really talking about here? And that's what you will find here. And that's the Behind the Perv exclusive. And there's going to be more coming from that we'll get into. 13 predictions for 2022. Tsunami, Space War, Dark Winter, Soylent Green, JFK Returns. There's also something in here about the Pope Della effect. Why do so many people misremember the Pope dying on Christmas? So anyways, a few of the stories. Just go to fakeworld.news, secure yourself a copy. They can't digitally ban it. They can't flag it. They could burn it, but they'd have to get into your house first. All right, let me see here. Going through comments. Travis says, I won't sleep till I finish the season. Yeah, I would say watch Utopia from start to finish, 100%. Same with the 100, because this is definitely predictive programming, and it's to the point where I can predict the predictive programming, and I did. So for example, and coincidentally, on November the 30th, I was watching the 100. And the episode I was watching was season 1, episode 13. So I'm thinking, that's interesting. 113. Because all of the predictive programming that I can find, or most of it rather, that has to do with the next coming agenda, uses the same numbers. What happens to be the case that on episode 13 of season 1, 113, a space station falls. And that's a huge part of the plot. It's actually called an arc. Another thing I mentioned earlier. About history rhyming and Noah's Ark being reintroduced in all these different films. And many films I can find use arcs. I mean, I could do a list of films. It's like pretty much anything on Netflix will have space junk as one of the main storylines. But my point being, not only did that happen, not only did this episode of this newly released TV show, 113, have a space station falling on that date, but on November the 30th, NASA had to cancel a spacewalk because of space junk. So you can see how there's a parallel between the news and the entertainment. And I'm saying it's not coincidental. Finbar says Watchmen is excellent. Yes, the episode She Was Hit by Space Junk was released on 11/3 of 2019. And I only watched Watchmen to see that episode because I'm looking at these connections between the author of that episode, who also wrote V for Vendetta, which may as well have been Virus, and these other various events. It's like, look, Alan Moore from V for Vendetta, who wrote that episode in Watchmen too, he's got to be one of these meta scripters. Commenter says, I just finished episode one, season 1 of the 100. Okay, well, look at the logo for 100. There's a few things about it. If any of you are familiar with the mud flood theory, conspiracy theory, the first time I ever heard the phrase reset, it wasn't from Darth Claus. It was from the mud flood conspiracy theorists who said that we are about to have another reset, that we just had a reset a couple hundred years ago, and that they wipe out most of the population and they replace them with orphan trains, children who are sent down to repopulate. That's what the mud flood theory was about, that there was some kind of calamity that wiped everything out and buried what was before. So I figured, okay, it's probably just it's not literal mud. It's just like a way of just saying they, whitewashed everything or whatever. Burned everything down so they could build back better. So that was a theme that was kind of introduced first through that area of inquiry and theorizing, conjecture. And then you have this great reset happen. And I'm like, okay, now that's interesting, because the show The 100 is about the same thing. It's about how the world has been destroyed because of you and what your kids are doing. So we destroyed the world, because that's how every movie has to start for some reason. And they have to build back better. So what they do is they go up into an ark and they choose only the best and the brightest from the ark or whatever. They have a select group of people. They're all 18 and they drop them down to earth. And this is just like what the mud flood conspiracy theorists say about the repopulation, with a bunch of young people just inheriting all this property. And that's sort of what happens. It's a reset. But again, you have other ideas in here that are brought up, like the idea of man is constantly destroying the world and that we have to build back better. And so this is also a cautionary tale. Like, if we don't change our ways, this is going to happen. Now, the symbolism here is very interesting to me too, because the logo is the number 100. And if you go into the 11.3 predictive programming that points to all the stuff we're talking about, this number figures prominently, and I'll explain how, but I want to point out how it has the two zeros in 100 colliding into each other. To me, that signifies two things. One, corona, the eclipse. Oftentimes in the movies like Donnie Darko, referencing the end of the world 2020 corona, they focus on an eclipse where you can see the sun's corona. So it looks like an eclipse. This is also Space Odyssey 2001 made use of the symbol of the eclipse, and that may also have been what was represented by the two towers becoming one. So this is all just alchemical symbolism, you could say. But I also find it interesting that there's another connotation here. So in the Twin Towers, you have two towers that fall, but this is in the space station, in the next Space 9/11, it's being foreshadowed in Stanley Kubrick's Space Odyssey with that space station, which isn't two columns, but it's two wheels. So you have these two wheels, and I'm just suggesting here that this movie, this TV show, that has a future post-reset and a space station falling, all these interesting coincidences, I think it's foreshadowing what Kubrick may have written into our big meta script, that our next 9/11 involves the space station falling, and the two rings symbolize a few things again, like the two towers, the eclipse, also two ages as we transition from one age into the next, and how the process of transitioning is probably kind of messy, so they're colliding. And I also want to point out that we enter the new age, the space age, and this is inaugurated by the space papacy going into the heavens, starting with Branson and then Bezos. So these guys are poking their heads out there and looking around. They're going up into space, getting the God's eye view, overjaw effect. It's just so overwhelming they can't shut their mouths when they're looking out the window. And they get the overview effect, is what they call it. A cognitive shift, where now they feel like they're mankind's saviors because they've seen things from God's point of view. But I think it's interesting that after these guys get down, they all have these accidents, and it involves the same symbol of two wheels or two cycles or two, crashing into each other. First, Branson, he comes down and he goes for a bicycle ride and he crashes his bike, and he describes it, and it's all fake. You can tell by the pictures. He calls it a colossal cycle crash. Again, colossal cycle crash, Richard Branson. And it looks totally staged, but I'm just thinking, wait, Richard Branson injured in colossal cycling crash. CCC. Very interesting terminology here. Doesn't look injured. He's smiling. His shirt's ripped up, but there's no blood beneath it. Typical for, kind of one of these fake events. But anyway, my point being is this. The bicycle crash, 2 wheels. I think it's symbol. It's a symbol of the coming space station crash. So then you have, is he 91 now? Captain Kirk, or Shatner, he's driving and he crashes his black Mercedes SUV, supposedly. And so I'm looking at the pictures, the only available pictures from this crash, and it looks like a photo op. It doesn't look real. It's very Masony if you look at the background, bricks. He's also doing the ubiquitous for the Illuminati, the one eye symbol. But what you have here is a profile of a car where one of the wheels is crashed. Again, he went to space, he gets in a crash. The other guy goes into space, he gets in a crash. And I'm saying that there's a repeated symbol that's showing up in the news and in the movies having to do with the space agenda and the people who've gone up there. And I don't think these are coincidences, but we'll continue our decoding as we go along. All right, let's see here. There it says the decoder of their codes. Yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at here. We're deciphering. This is just film criticism, and we're going into, I guess you could call it just a subtextual analysis. But this isn't conspiracy theory. I mean, we're talking about a movie called Utopia, where this is literally the plot. Where they're looking too deeply into the comics, and they figured out what's coming next. And that's kind of exactly what we did, or are doing. And I think we're doing it with accuracy. So the next thing would be for Bill Gates or someone like that to send their meme cleanup crew to get rid of anybody who has seen too much of what's to come. All right, let's go ahead and go through the headlines for today. So we're talking about Dog Star, the Dog Star venerated by all the occult secret societies and how it's venerated tonight. And at midnight it reaches its highest point. So I don't know if you're supposed to pray to it, take a shot, or kiss. Whatever you do, you're supposed to somehow do it under the light of the Dog Star. And then you'll be one with all of the adrenochrome junkies and their secret rituals. So participate if you want. Let's see, we're talking about the movies Don't Look Up. Okay, this is the other thing I want to talk about. So Don't Look Up is about this space iceberg that's about to destroy the Earth. The story of the Titanic, the story of the world today if we don't give up on capitalism and freedom and all that. Well, before COVID started, you had the comet called C-19, Atlas. Now, C-19 Atlas was this green dot in the sky, if you recall, and they say it was breaking up. Hubble captures the breakup of Comet Atlas, breaking up as it nears the sun. So this comes out in the third or fourth quarter of 2019. So we called it C-19, Comet Atlas. So a couple things about it. One, it's breaking up and all that. Well, after the coronavirus started spreading throughout the world before it was a pandemic, there were scientists who actually said, hey, maybe the coronavirus came from outside of our solar system. Maybe it came from this comet. And of course, this was immediately, here's from Baltimore Sun. Did COVID-19 come from space? So this is, of course, before stories like this were banned as dangerous misinformation. It says, few have probably noticed that the current pandemic, because this omission is simply this. We are for astronomy and space exploration, and the pandemic's irrelevant in that regard. But what if that's not always the case, or hasn't been for pandemics? Goes on to talk about the possibility that the comet might have brought, here we go, pandemics of influenza-like diseases introduced to the Earth by comets. When the world passes through the debris stream of a virus-carrying comet, tiny fragments can find the way to the surface with their diseased cargo intact. This explains why viruses and deadly pandemics appear suddenly, and why their geographical points of origin may be difficult to pin down. The debris can spread across multiple locations. So it references a 1977 paper, Does Epidemic Disease Come from Space? It says few scientists believe that COVID-19 came from space. Did it come from the meat market? Did it escape a lab? Anyway, this was a story at one point. did COVID come from outer space with his green comet? And of course, the world shuts down. So one of the things I noted about this is that the comet was called Atlas, and Atlas Shrugged, the book, is about a reset. John Galt, who is John Galt? Well, he pushes the reset button. They shut down society so they could build back better. That's the basic story with Atlas Shrugged. So it's interesting that C-19 Atlas breaks apart, seems like Atlas shrugging, and then we have COVID-19, which causes the world to shut down. Well, the movie Don't Look Up, which you can find right now and watch it so you can be properly conditioned for the next major psyop. In Don't Look Up, you've got this green comet-like thing which causes the world to shut down because it's going to be destroyed in 6 months and 14 days. So I'm like, that's interesting. You could look at Don't Look Up and this incoming asteroid as just an alternative reality for 2020, where instead of a virus, it was a comet. And again, this is programming, predictive programming, spot on, and I think it tells you how they operate. And this is a great example of characters being used because of their, what I would call their Hollywood archetypes. It's not just like typecasting, it goes deeper. So you have this character played by somebody who basically can't not be disassociated from the iceberg. He is the guy associated with the Titanic sinking, so now he's associated with the Earth being iceberged by a massive comet. All right, going through some comments. Jennifer Lovecraft Reed says, I'm sticking to myself in IPS tonight. Zara says, if Tim wasn't on, he'd have tens of thousands of followers. Oh, if I wasn't on target, I wouldn't have followers. Yeah, I would. You're right. He said he would have tens of thousands of followers. Look, 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago, we had 11,000 subs after 4 weeks of covering a few topics. And I think you're right about that. They deliberately do try to sabotage any channels that build what I would consider to be a counter media think tank, because they love alt media. They love the fake alternative media, and it's all fake news. They're all world stagers. If they don't know about crisis actors and psyops, if they don't know about the meta script, then they're just actors, wittingly or not, dupes or not. And so, yeah, you can follow misleaders or dupes if you want to. But, you know, to me, I'm looking at everything objectively. NASA warns 2 potentially hazardous massive asteroids will get close to Earth this January 2022. Will they hit? So, here we go. Again, I have to ask, how is it that they are accurate 100% of the time when they send probes to other worlds, but they're wrong 100% of the time when it comes to asteroids inbound? So you can send an iPhone-sized probe to a comet 2.2 million miles away, the equivalent of a fly landing on a speeding bullet, but you cannot tell us with any precision when these incoming rocks are actually going to hit. I mean, there's that poor lady in Canada who was asleep at night when a big fireball ripped through her roof and the rock landed on the pillow next to her head. Like, she could have used a warning, but no. All right, let's see. That's one of the stories. We've talked about the Denver mass shooter Lyndon McLeod, who killed 5 and wrote chilling novels about a man who kills people. We'll be talking about that more as we get into the I guess this is going to be the next thing. You know, they got rid of Islamic terrorists. You no longer have suicide bombers shutting down planes. You have mad Karens, mask shaming people. And now the shooters have kind of been, look, we were talking the other night about this. It's like, wait, whatever happened to serial killers? Well, they've been replaced by mass shooters. Whatever happened to your jihadi terrorists radicalized by the Quran, wanting to blow stuff up? They've been replaced by the MAGA ban with their QAnon, who are now wanting to blow stuff up. And it's for the same reason. They have the same enemies. He identified as a Nazi. All right, NASA funding research into how humans will react to aliens. See, aliens are just a supernatural being, a replacement supernatural being for the atheists. So they'll never believe in angels because that's silly. But aliens, yeah. Beam me up. That's why when the aliens arrive, you're going to see it. You're going to see this has been really a story all along. They've been preparing the atheists to accept the new religious paradigm. They've got the angry God covered, global warming. They got original sin covered, carbon footprint. Now they have sin that they can use to regulate society and turn us into Puritans. They call that virus. They can shut down our society for that. They have all this stuff figured out. It was probably not a coincidence that they originally started the shutdowns, the lockdowns during Lent. Quarantine. 40 days, Lent, 40 days, quarantine. I think it's all not a coincidence. We were all just inducted into this new religion. So it's just a matter of time until God descends, which is going to be the AI God, which that's another 1969-2021 overlap. In 1969, you had ARPANET, connecting computers. 2021, Internet of Things. Also, the Savior Machine, a David Bowie song from 1969, The Man Who Sold the World. There's a song about President Joe handing over control of the world to the Savior Machine to end world hunger, etc. Well, now we have Gaia, which is a name for the god of the earth. Gaia, which stands for Global AI Initiative Alliance. And then you had all the world leaders this year gathered at the digital monolith at NATO, a big digital obelisk, a digital monolith. So this is all, again, I think repetition as we enter into 2022. I just want to put a cap on 2021 was 1969 in many ways being repeated. So anyway, we have this new religion being introduced, and it's just a matter of time until they bring in the alien/angels. And when the aliens do arrive, it'll be partisan. Right wing, they'll say, get your guns and Bibles, and the left wing, they will say, beam us up. We want to be transhuman. If you look at the big narrative they've given us with the modern scientific paradigm, we are halfway between ape and alien. Apes are bad and they're animalistic. Humans are a little more refined, but we're still working on it. But aliens, well, they got the smooth technology, life extension. They've transcended gender and emotion. They're just perfectly like these gray eternal beings. And they represent our future evolution. So they've kind of given us this notion that that's progress. And angels are also androgynous and pure, devoid of any of the earthly lusts. And they only visit the people who are pure. And this whole story of like alien hybrids and abduction, this stuff was all invented by the Air Force. Look into the movie Mirage Men. It's all about how the Air Force created the modern alien mythology. Why? To cover up any kind of advanced aircraft that you might spot. So if you see some kind of aircraft, you record it, you talk about it on the internet, it doesn't sound like to anyone, oh, that's from the local military base. They'll say, oh, it's from Mars. It's from Jupiter. It's from Venus. They came here because they ran out of water. It's all disinformation. All right, I'm going through your comments. Linda Curtis says, Comet is a bathroom cleaner, all you need to know. Well, yeah, well, and, in the comet itself, though, in the movie, it could be anything, and I don't think they can predict comets like that. They can't predict asteroids, like I said. So I think the reason why we're being conditioned with comets and asteroids is because they want to surprise us with what they're really going to do. So what they're really going to do is they're going to do the space war thing, because it's more likely, Occam's razor, it's more likely and it's far more believable that man will shoot down our sky infrastructure and cause stuff to fall than nature. And if you look at the recent climate, politically and otherwise, with regard to outer space, there's a huge beef right now. China is mad at Elon Musk. They see that as a provocation that twice, once in July and once in October, he nearly took out their new space station with a CubeSat. They see it as intentional. And I think it is intentional that China and Russia both put the space station into danger with its space junk. Now, just a side note, because I know most of you here already know this. It's all a movie. The space station's fake. Like, that's not even a bit. We're just talking about the world stage theater as it plays out. We happen to have a somewhat privileged perspective because we're not in the Illuminati. We're not at the top of that pyramid. but we have many of the same, I think, insights and perspectives onto how they're using this media, the PSYOP entertainment complex, to achieve their ends. So we're close enough, to see, but we're not, to me, I'm just trying to maintain here that, yeah, I know it's fake, but I can't just ignore it. I need to know what the masses believe because they're being conditioned for something. Like, earlier this summer, there was this thing, I think it was called, it's a video game, is it called Fortnite? Where there's a mass live event where all these game players, millions at the same time, they participated in the shooting down of a mothership. It was that's what they called it, a mothership. So imagine this, millions of people playing a video game. It was called the Mothership Live Event, August 22nd, play-by-play visualization. So at this mothership event, millions of people were simultaneously in a simulation. They were simulating the takedown of a, quote, mothership. So then they're all experiencing this big object falling down from the sky. Again, just more of the same, but I'm showing you how it reaches everyone. But what's more, they called it a mothership. Well, the ISS is the goddess. It represents a temple in the sky. The goddess of the night sky is Isis. Isis, ISS. Not a coincidence. Just like it's not a coincidence that the rocket they sent in 1969 is called Saturn. Saturn, you got the Apollo, the sun, the night sky. They choose their names off these things, not just for aesthetic purposes. No, they actually do it because there are deep occult references to all of it. This is this thing that illustrates my point. On the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, the Washington Monument became a rocket. So the Washington Monument is an obelisk, represents the Earth god, Saturn. So on the Washington Monument, on the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, they actually projected the Saturn V rocket onto the obelisk, and so it launched in front of everybody. Well, the rocket is just a burning obelisk, but my point being, they named these things after these gods and goddesses for a reason. Take for example, recently you had Osiris Rex. Now Osiris Rex is the one that had to go shoot the big rock called Bennu. Well, Osiris Rex, King Osiris, another reference obviously, and then Bennu is actually the Egyptian version of the phoenix before there was a phoenix. The Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum will celebrate the 50th of the Apollo 11 with a life-size projection of the Saturn V rocket on the monument. It says the project will map out on the 555-foot monument. 555. I heard it's 111 feet below. And of course, the 666 has everything to do with sun worship. And by the way, every May at the obelisk, they do a Burning Man festival, which they call Catharsis at the Mall. And these are interesting symbols. They overlap, and we're seeing the transition from one age to another, where they just seamlessly replace one set of symbols for another. The obelisk of the New Age, and it means all the same things, is the Space Needle. And it's consciously designed. It was designed to represent a descending mothership and the tractor beam. And you get on the tractor beam. And they encode these things with numerology. I mentioned the number 42 earlier. Well, it's not a coincidence that the number 42 is encoded into the Seattle Space Needle. Washington, State 42, Space Needle, 42 meters wide, 42 seconds from the bottom to the top when you ride the thing. They encode these things very deep. But we'll get back to that shortly. I didn't want to get too sidetracked, but I was just talking about how aliens are a replacement for angels. And the people who believe in aliens that are atheistic are basically dupes. All right, let me go through some comments. Lane Dion says, Travis Scott did a Fortnite concert as a giant. Okay, interesting. I mean, these individuals who are massively influential with the youth are being used as carriers for very specific memes, mind viruses, and ideas. So here you have it again. I was getting to this. The mothership that they shot down, I believe, represents the ISS. The mother reference there. In fact, when you look at the spacewalks You're looking at a story. So it starts off with, from Apollo 1, where they burn up at the launch pad. There's a story unfolding, which we've talked about before. But one of the things I like to point out is we're looking at the birth of the new age. And it starts off with a conception, and I think that's what we saw with the Apollo mission and the moon. It's a god and a goddess conception of the new age. But this period of the space station going around the Earth, I think, is a period of gestation, and so we're waiting for the birth. Well, the goddess of the night sky, Isis, symbolized by the ISS, is up there in space, which is the womb of the goddess, where the sun god comes from every day. So the way this works in their ritual theater is we're waiting for the birth of the new age, and you see these spacewalks where the astronauts are out there with their umbilical cord, and they look like fetuses. You can't see their faces, oversized heads. The proportions are off because they're in these big unwieldy spacesuits, and they got the cord, and then they're dangling out there in the womb of Isis. So to me, it's all just ritual theater. It's fertility rites is what it really is. And again, this is just basically revealed in all of their iconography. You look at the comments that were made about Jeff Bezos' rocket, and everyone laughs because what does it look like? Well, it looks like that for a reason. Then you look at Virgin Galactic, all the goddess symbolism. It's not rocket science. Infinite Plane Radio. There's a slight delay. I don't know why it's still ringing. I'm going to refresh the phone if you want to call right back. I must have 2 instances of the phone up. So if you'll bear with me for... Got it. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, brother. How you been, Tim?
Very good. Thanks for holding. And this is 5 Minutes of Fame. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I just wanted to say 2 quick things. 2022 coming up in numerology. This year is telling us it has a 75% chance of being a triple number 2 of doo-doo. It contains 50% more number 2 than the year 2021.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. I'll set my expectations lower, and the next thing...
the only bigger crap fest is going to be 2222 if humanity makes it that far. And the other thing I wanted to say in numerology is, if you add the phone number up, including the 1 plus the area code for Infinite Plane Radio, you could break it down to a numerological 42.
Okay, see, that's not intentional. So 1-833-311-1984 equals
but how,
42.
Oh, it's like Mumfree's Law. Have you ever heard of Mumfree's Law?
No, what's that?
Mumfree's Law is like Murphy's Law of grammar. They spell it like Murphy's misspelled.
Happy January.
And I even think they put the possessive apostrophe in the wrong spot. So the theory of Mumfree's Law is any time you are online and correct somebody's grammar, that post itself will contain a grammatical error.
Okay, Mumfree's Law. I got it. Kind of like Murphy's Law. Is he related to Murphy?
Some people do it so many times, like they will correct somebody's grammar and then they will like use a singular word instead of plural, or plural instead of a singular, or they will use are instead of is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and look, I'm not a grammar Nazi. I use Grammarly and it corrects things. But hey, really quick, I want to say thanks to Not Cute. We have 36 people watching, and he throws in $36
I wanted to tell you about Grammarly since you mentioned it. All of these programs that check your spelling and your grammar, they have think tanks that read your shit. So if you have a great idea for a book or something, and they have the resources to read it, you will have your idea stolen.
Interesting. Okay. Now I've heard. I mean, there is such a thing as there's a lot of intellectual property theft. I mean, it's crazy on Kindle. I hadn't thought about it being harvested directly.
I had it myself. I've told you my story. I'm not going to repeat it. You know my story from people who made $50 million a year. The fact of the matter is, if you don't have a little hunger in you, your originality goes out the window. When you become comfortable and you are well fed, the strive to create jokes unless a joke falls on your lap, you'll never do it. You know what I mean? So they have to steal. And, like people like Steven Spielberg and stuff with all this money, they need ideas. So well, maybe not him, he's retired, but people like him, J.J. Abrams, things like, they will pay places like that. I worked for a place called Comedy Wire. And they say, hey, we want to joke about trans something, or we want to joke about Donald Trump something. Donald Trump was running for president of 8th grade. What was his campaign promises? Things like that. And what happens is when you work on things like that, you have a contest, 700 comics write in.
I got it. You're talking about meme theft. Meme theft, they're crowdsourcing
right.
without
Well,
attribution. It's a crime, but you know
meme.
what? The best you can do today, I think, is you have to be aggressively defensive of all your memes and kill for them if you have to. Anyway, hey, I appreciate your call. 2022, you said...
Happy New Year to everybody, and 2022 is going to be better. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Hey, everyone, that is 5 minutes of fame. And yes, beware the joke thieves. There are people who will steal your memes. Look, I'm a meme thief. I do it all the time. But most of the memes that I steal are already stolen. Like, I can tell their value, their resolution is so bad. It's like, this one looks like it came out of 2005. It's like, no, it's just been cropped, copied, stolen from Telegram. I grabbed it from Twitter, download it, share it here, and by the time you get it, it's been used a few times. So, all right, let's see what else we have here. Zareth says, write it in code or they will steal it. The parasites will steal it. Yeah, exactly. All right, or you just cover certain areas that they don't want to steal. Nobody's going to steal your flat earth memes or anything with the word fake. There's certain ideas that they don't even want to steal and appropriate. They just want to bury them or pretend like they don't exist. I would say that the whole mud flood reset idea, though, is like one of the dominant themes of Netflix. And I have to wonder, this reset theme that we see with this conspiracy theory of the mud flood, is it because that theory is valid? Or is it because they are trying to condition the conspiracy theorists that there's some kind of reset that actually happens on a predictable and cyclical basis, that this is like a normal thing to occur? Because I had never really considered it, except for, really, we're talking about, are we on a world stage that was literally scrubbed 200 or 300 years ago? How far back do you trust your history? How far back do you trust your news? I mean, what is history but news? Going back through time. Linda says they steal from kids with the essay and poetry competitions in school. Yeah, I could see that too. But one of the best ways you can protect your content is to publish it and then be there to defend it. And that's what I meant when I said be ready to kill for your memes. Just tweet it. And then if it can be determined that the person who stole your thing could reasonably have been expected to have come across it, then it becomes a difficult case to make. Salty Siren says low quality memes are elite. Yeah, look, it's 2021, 2022 now, and I'm still using crop and drops, where you just grab a square face and you drop it on a stock footage with a watermark. I love crop and drop memes with watermarks. In fact, I have a few I can share. Let's go through a few memes here. Phones are open 833-311-1984. So I saw this one going around, and I don't know if it was real. Some people will do this. They don't share an original tweet. They'll take a screen cap of a tweet, and then they'll post it and say, hey, look what somebody said. I think this is real. And so you don't really know if it's real or not. And a lot of people just assume that it is. So I see this meme going around of a Rottweiler, and the person said, I hope this isn't real. And the original tweet was, my dog caught Omicron, and I can't risk getting killed by this, so I'm listening to my vet and putting my dog down. So this person puts their vet down because this person's vet puts their dog down over Omicron. So I thought this was some kind of a fake meme or something, because sadly the truthers are really good at faking news. They do their own fake news. So-called truthers are the first ones to... QAnoners are the worst. They're so deceptive. You can never really trust it. So anyway, I didn't trust that meme, and I looked at it closely, and I just kind of decided this is probably not real. So let me see if anybody can tell the difference. So let me go ahead and go through these. Vet confirmed the worst. Ruth tested positive for Omicron. I made the decision to put her down. I loved her, but no way was I going to let her infect me and possibly kill me. Rest in peace. So it's one of these things, to me, it just looks super unbelievable. And why would someone take a picture of their sweet animal and then say to everyone, I had to have them killed because I might have caught a cold that has a 0.001 chance of killing me? But most people retweeted them thinking these were real. Infinite Plane Radio.
Here on Philippine Radio, there's Tommy King calling in, buddy. How we doing tonight? I don't know the check-in of the what the subjects are. I don't.
Mostly I'm talking about how right now, all around the world, people are celebrating a ritual dedicated to the Masonic god Sirius, the dog star. Are you participating?
Sure. Right. Well, I'm assuming what we're all doing is, I mean, you have the Christmas tree, you have Christmas, and nobody knows about the Southern Cross. Of even if, say, the Cancer equator Capricorn ring around a flat plane of the AI New World Order UN map is the truth of what it is, but yet does the sun cross those planes or those time periods at the same time that we're dealing with the horoscope? I would have to say, I guess we are, because right now I live in North Dakota and it's cold as shit. And so the next few days, if it's going to be cold as shit and then it starts warming back up, I can only assume I'm going to be a motherfucker that prays for the
Okay,
sun to
so
come back.
just to be
'Cause
clear,
it's cold as shit.
now I'm not judging either way, but so you do believe in an ice wall, am I correct?
It's not that I believe in an ice wall. I mean, okay, it's tough right now.
No, I got it. You have a
I
more
got
nuanced view, and
my
I'm glad.
sister. Oh,
I'm glad. You don't know for
no,
sure,
no,
but it's a good explanation. That's
yeah, and at the
something.
same time, and I'm glad that we're on this radio show right now. And I do have a couple conspiracy light people that just came back in from their New Year's plans. So I would love if you guys are ready to do live on the air, like at least I got a two-person. Um, oh, so
Yeah, what's the name of your friend's channel? Your friends, you said Love and Light on the air? Repeat.
no. I said that they were just coming in from having a New Year's celebration, and then so I was going to say they didn't know that I was going to be on the phone right now, and it caught them off guard, and I thought we could caught them off guard to wonder if they believe in gravity. I know one guy named Robbie over here that has a high school diploma from Westport High School that probably believes that
Well, look,
he does
look, look.
not have a diploma.
I don't want to
I
tell you.
apologize.
I don't want to tell you how to behave at your own New Year's parties.
Go
But
ahead.
if you start debating whether or not gravity exists at a time like this, I don't know if they'll be that receptive to you.
Well, one's my little sister, she's a beautiful woman, and she you know what she does? She's the little sister that will call me a fucking retard to my face, but then in the back of her head, for life, she'll probably be like, "Big bro probably was right," but she never will tell it, but she gets it. She's
Right.
that
So,
type of little
okay. So
sister. I
when
don't
the
know if
world
you
goes
guys have
flat,
ones like that.
like, because some people, like, let's say the world is just declared flat. There's so many people out there who will, who gave you hell, who will say they knew the whole time. They'll act nonchalant, like you're like, what do you mean you didn't know? Like they'll play it down. They're not going to say to you, "Hey, I got to give you a lot of credit. You were right about everything." That's not going to happen.
Yeah. But it's gonna be one of them type of deals. We've had a nice night tonight.
What if I told you I could give a fuck what shape the world is?
Oh yeah, okay. So she's one of those.
No, on
And
New
she's
look
been
on New Year's, it's probably not the most like relevant topic. Although, I mean, I brought up that this date is actually based on the position of the dog star that all the secret societies worship, and it's like, well, shouldn't that matter to some degree that people may be participating in some occult ritual, some mega ritual?
Aren't they doing that every goddamn day of the year? So why the fuck does it matter tonight?
Whoa. Okay. Did we hear that?
Yeah, we heard that, and that is probably that's a valid point. As of 2020, if you ask me, the human race sold out. They gave in to this new religious paradigm without any fight or fuss. All the religions shut down. So no, I mean I pointed out to be somewhat ironic, but no, I know. The whole world is just gone with this program, so it's not even a shock to say it. It should be, but it's not.
Well, what do we think about that? Because one, I know I've shocked my whole family since I've brought up a lot of this crazy shit, and my sister, she can get on board with a lot of the goddamn, name one thing. The dinosaurs are fake. You almost ripped your son's head off for bringing that up.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that one because you can't even get through the school system if you don't believe in global warming and dinosaurs. So I wouldn't even want to broach that topic. But I mean, it's just the fact that the public is very ignorant about how much of the news is actually propaganda and how all of the entertainment is.
Oh, hold on. We got a son of a bitch that just brought up right now. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, hey,
No,
look, I'm going to go ahead and take the next call. You want to render aid or whatever?
We got a guy that I guess brought out globes for Christmas. I didn't even see it.
They bought you a
Or
globe
by
for
the time he came with
Christmas?
the globe. I guess he did. Robbie, we're going to find out. This guy's name's Robbie. We'll figure out if he did or not. And on the next time I tap into IPS, brother, you guys have a nice night. Now, Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to just, you know what I mean, know what it's going to be like for those.
All right, hey, appreciate the call, Tommy King. Have a nice night. All right, everyone. Somebody bought this flat earther globes for Christmas. And he's just now, some guy named Robbie bought Tommy, a flat earther, a globe for Christmas. Like, what do you make of that? It'd be like buying a book by Christopher Hitchens, for one of your Christian friends. It's kind of strange. Well, I don't know. Okay, let's go ahead and go through some comments. Zareth says Operation High Jump. They had to jump over something. Yep, the ice wall. But I wonder, is there a dome that connects to the ice wall? Like, I still got to figure that part out. David A. Pryor says people love their dinos. Yeah, the dinosaur predictive programming begins when you're very young. Every nursery, everything in the children's clothes section at the Walmarts, every cartoon that you see advertised, anything targeting the youth is dinosaurs or aliens. They believe in dinosaurs and aliens from birth. Why is that? Well, I think it's replaced the older stuff. It's a new mythos for them, and they need you to believe in aliens because it opens the door for everything else. It used to be if you believe in aliens, you're crazy, tinfoil hat. Now, if you don't believe in aliens, you're not scientific. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, not believing in aliens is closed-minded, like putting a bucket of water in the ocean and then declaring there's no whales when you don't draw one out. So now, yeah, you're wrong if you doubt the existence of aliens. Look at this meme that Elon Musk posted. And it has me wondering, who's choosing his memes? Does he actually choose these? Because this would not be authorized for a world stager. You have a meme of two individuals. One of them is masked, QR coded, and porcupined with vaccines. The other is a pureblood, just an alt-right figure. And they're both asking themselves, why aren't they dead yet? But it is kind of poignant here, where you do have the situation where neither side has been eliminated. The vaxxers weren't vaxageddoned. Last year, all the anti-vaxxers are running around saying, don't do it. They're going to kill us all. Well, that hasn't happened. Meanwhile, all the vaxees, the vax junkies, who should be in their basements quarantined but are still running around mask shaming people, they're wondering, when are all the vax people going to die? Well, the thing is, there's a reason why. It's called the whole thing's a hoax. So I'm not saying the guy on the right is any better than the guy on the left. They just have a different side of the fence that they're on. I think both sides are equally wrong. The vax is just a schism, and the virus is just a replacement for sin in order to moderate the behaviors of this modern atheistic world. David A. Pryor, good point. He says, dino belief goes hand in hand with world-ending meteors too. You got it. So before you're even able to construct sentences on your own, you're already taught, I live here on this ball, dinosaurs are fun to play with, and then you get into class like, oh, it's science. Oh, those dinosaurs all died, big rock from the sky. So you're taught about extinction and extermination. That's like your very first lesson. Oh, everything can end in a heartbeat. And then you already have these built-in attachments from the time that you're born until you go to school to dinosaurs. Dinosaurs in the movies, you cry with them, you laugh at them, you wear them on your clothes, they're in your nursery, you play with dinosaur toys. So you've built up in your imagination, Barney hugs you, and then they just slaughter them in front of you. Like that's MK Ultra, if anything. But yeah, again, they need you to believe in the end at any time. So your whole life you're growing up believing that, yeah, it's plausible. We could all die at any moment now. All right. Phones are open 833-311-1984. Commenter says that meme's hilarious. Yeah, well, Musk posted the meme, and it just has me wondering, is there a boardroom? Like, does Musk trust himself with his own Twitter, to tweet to millions of people and to not just regularly bomb? Like, I kind of wonder, maybe he's got some kind of committee and they sit around and they decide, okay, these have been poll tested. This is a pretty good one here. And look, I like memes on all sides, even if I don't believe in this whole pandemic thing. This is a fetus with a joint in the shades. When you get aborted by leftists and turned into a vaccine, so you give them myocarditis and blood clots. You see, this is the Psywar back and forth. One side wants the other side to die from ignorance, from not getting vaxxed. The other side wants their enemies to die from taking the vax. But they both want each other to die. It's goo bloods versus pure bloods, saved versus the unsaved. Well, one group believes, oh, we're saved by birth. We're born pure. The other group believes, oh, no, you're not saved until you've been injected. So you're born impure. So what is it? Are you born impure or are you born pure? And you're not going to have any sort of agreement on this. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen in 2022. They're going to further the schism. That was the whole point of this thing in the first place. I mean, all the talk about unity in this one world thing, well, the one world can only exist as long as they have this division between the insiders and the outsiders. If you want to know what the future looks like, Soylent Green, Demolition Man, combined with probably 100. Oh, by the way, the movie 100, I've been talking about it, about this space station, the ark that falls. And if you look at the intro, it looks like the Statue of Liberty is up to its neck in mud. So make of that what you will. All right, let's see here. Portal Complex says, best TV show ever. Which one are you talking about? Post a link. All right, going through comments. Looks like Jurassic Park's making a comeback. Yeah, you're right about that, though. I think you nailed it. The whole point of dino belief is to cement the existence of asteroids. And you know what they've said recently, and you can't dispute this because science. They said that dinosaurs or dinosaur bones have found their way to the moon because the asteroid that came down 66.6 million years ago, the size of Mount Everest, punctured a hole so fast when it arrived that it actually created a direct pipeline to space, a vacuum, and Earth like a super soaker, sprayed the moon with biomatter, including dinosaurs. So yeah, there's dinosaurs on the moon, according to science. A bizarre conspiracy says North Korea leader Kim Jong-un has been replaced by a body double. I don't know why that's a bizarre conspiracy theory, but I don't see it. Although there was something kind of strange a couple of years ago. If you remember during Easter, he died, supposedly, or he went into a, quote, vegetative state. And then he came back. So we have that. We have 2 potentially hazardous asteroids getting close to Earth in January. China wants America to protect their space station from Elon Musk. Again, Musk has pretty much started World War III single-handedly. China sending machine gun carrying robots near fuel conflict. Okay, that's good to know. Again, 2 more giant asteroids, and then here's something else. Alien invaders could turn asteroids into city-destroying bombs before bleeding the Earth dry, a professor claims. So this idea of space war, Also includes things like kinetic weapons, weaponized asteroids, but now it also includes aliens using asteroids as weapons. So they may go the cheap route, not even show you any aliens. All we get are the special effects. Five of the wildest conspiracy theories of 2021, from man-made Hurricane Ida to JFK Jr. returning from the dead. Is anybody here holding out hope for the Kennedys to come back in 2022? All right, let's see. This is just a quick list here of five. JFK Jr. was supposed to come back. JFK was supposed to come back. Claims that vaccines are magnetic, apparently false. Although I know some people who claim that their goo blood relatives are magnetic. It says here, the election conspiracy. These are boring conspiracies. How is that even a conspiracy? And you know what isn't a conspiracy? Like this is crazy to me. So it's a conspiracy theory, and it's kooky to say that man caused a hurricane, but we're supposed to believe that not recycling is going to cause global warming, ocean levels to rise. These are all blue pill, hardly even worth considering. And you'll notice a lot of the mainstream conspiracies are perfectly partisan. Why is it that only left-wingers believe in climate change? And only right-wingers or non-affiliated believe in chemtrails? So centrists, right-wing, fringe, they're all for chemtrails, but they don't believe in climate change. They say that's preposterous that we could be controlling the environment. Well, what's the chemtrail agenda? Geoengineering. It's like it's the same thing. I saw this article in the Daily Beast. They were lamenting the lack of solidarity between chemtrail conspiracy theorists and climate change conspiracy theorists. Because they both have the same agenda here, except you know who goes further is at least the climate changers or climate change hoaxers have a plan. They're like, shut down the airplanes. You're destroying the earth. The chemtrail people never talk about shutting down the airplanes. They just point at it and they say, if you don't believe me, you're a sheep. But they don't do anything meaningful. If the chemtrail believers did as much to antagonize airlines as the environmentalists, they'd actually get somewhere with it. Ivar says Bezos' space dong can kamikaze the dildo asteroid. Yeah, it does look like that. And you know what? I want to say this. And you talk about the asteroid that they just showed us. It's as big as Big Ben. It's probably on purpose that it's shaped that way. But what's more, it's not a coincidence that Jeff Bezos looks like Dr. Evil. In fact, you know, Dr. Evil has that scar on his eye to emphasize one eye. Jeff Bezos has one eye that's significantly wider open than the other. And what's more, Dr. Evil does have a spaceship, a rocket rather, that looks exactly like the rocket of Jeff Bezos. A little more explicit, but just a little bit. And it launches right out of his mountain. In fact, let me show you a side by side if you haven't seen this. And I can provide you many, many examples of not just Bezos, but all of the space popes, how they all have entertainment world counterparts. So if you're looking at the screen, you see Jeff Bezos on the left with his flying obelisk, and then on the other side you got Dr. Evil, same thing. Now these are not coincidences, just like it's not a coincidence that the sky is about to fall. They prepare you for everything. We'll have to do a whole night dedicated to the space papacy. Finbar says it'll hit on 119. You know, 119 was the release date for Donnie Darko, about stuff falling from the sky, and a movie that did have a lot of predictive programming for 9/11 and Corona. 119 was also the date that Patient Zero showed up for COVID in America, creating the pandemic. That was the date he came down with symptoms. It was declared a pandemic on 3/11. That number is very significant. Also, I think something else to point out, Jake Gyllenhaal, star of Donnie Darko, is in The Division, which comes out this year, 2022. So kind of interesting there, because The Division has a lot of predictive programming for COVID, for bioterror attacks in New York, and this, quote, dark winter comes out of The Division. And it's all Tom Clancy work. Well, 9/11 was a Tom Clancy. So here you've got a Tom Clancy novel turned reality, and then the movie counterpart. with Jake Gyllenhaal, who was in a movie hugely representative in 9/11 predictive programming. And it's all in the dates. You might also find this interesting, and this shows you how nuanced it is. Look at The Office episode 119. It came out on 3/11, Pandemic Day, and it was called St. Patrick's Day, but it's about somebody at the office having the flu and someone else wearing a mask, and it makes it very awkward for everybody. All about the flu, but it came out on 3/11. Look, I mean, we can go on forever on this stuff because it's that planned in advance. These space popes and their MSM or mainstream entertainment counterparts, not coincidental. You got Elon Musk with his dad, Werner von Braun. He's clearly based off of Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, combined with Tony Stark, Iron Man, combined with a few other characters, but you can kind of see where it comes together. Where von Braun's book, A Technical Tale about the first Mars colonist, has the guy named or called the Elon. So the Elon to colonize Mars existed before Elon existed. Richard Branson is from Zeboff Beeblebrox from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's a pretty obvious one. And then you have the man who fell to Earth is also very much encoded into the character of Jeff Bezos, which again, it's consistent with all of them. They prepared you for these characters in advance. They prepared you for Mars. Why is it that on Mars you have the logo of Game of Thrones House of Stark, the wolf head? And you have the Star Trek emblem as a big plateau out there. I'm like, well, that's interesting because Musk has the Starship. So there's your Star Trek connection. And Musk is also based on Iron Man. In fact, Robert Downey Jr., before he played Iron Man, studied Elon Musk to be a better Tony Stark. Iron Man. Well, House of Stark, Tony Stark, House of Stark's logo on Mars. And then if you look at the Kabbalistic associations, you'll find that Mars is associated with iron, with the color red. Even you'll find all these associations are very consistent because we're looking at a symbolic system. The Falcon 9 rocket, well, the falcon-headed god in the Egyptian pantheon is the god of Mars. So that again, the Falcon 9 Mars mission, Elon Musk, SpaceX, none of this is coincidental. And to get into the symbolism, why does this rocket look like a dong, an obelisk, whatever you want to call it? Why the absurdity? Why the blatant symbolism? Especially with Virgin Galactic. If you really look at it, you can see what I'm talking about. But what is this? Well, it's quite literally the basis for this mystery Babylon religion that we're all a part of. The Thelemic cults, which Jack Parsons, hugely important within this context of the space papacy, probably the first space pope. Jack Parsons, who died at 37 in a fire, if you want to believe it. Quite a lot we could go to Jack Parsons and his relationship to L. Ron Hubbard from Scientology, another space religion. But Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were engaged in something called, in sex magic. And the basis for it was Aleister Crowley's teachings, Parson being the American equivalent to Aleister Crowley. And in these teachings, in this book of the law, which is basically the Bible for the New Age religion, it's all about the relationship between higher consciousness, transcendence, and sex, and drugs. But basically, what these two were doing with Marjorie Cameron is they were trying to incarnate the Antichrist or something like that. But my point being, you can find in the book that this modern day space religion is the same as the old one, and that SpaceX is literally space sex. Because the goddess of space, the goddess of the night sky, Isis, has to have a conjugal visit with the earth god every night so the sun can be born. So every day the sun god dies, he's put in the ground, and then you have this bit of functional necrophilia where the goddess of the night sky meets the dead god, and together they conceive the sun for the next day. I mean, this is their basic occult New Age sun worship ceremony, and it's encoded into your space program. So SpaceX, well, space is the new heaven, and it all represents higher consciousness, and it goes deeper when you look into I think even the countdown. I believe the 10-to-1 represents the ascension on the tree of life from 10, the bottom, the kingdom, to the crown, one, the top. I have a documentary I did a while ago called A Cult of the Obelisk, where we discussed this stuff, but there's so much more that has occurred since then that I'm going to have to do a follow-up here in 2022. Lean Dion says Elon cameoed in the Iron Man movie. Salty Siren says the Virgin space plane is a uterus. That's correct. Virgin, Virgo, the goddess of the night sky. And if you look at the bottom of the Virgin Galactic space plane, you'll see a corona. It's a close-up of an eye. You'll see it here. Well, it looks like I think it's actually a corona. And something else, and I find this to be hilarious. There's a few things about this we could go into. A lot of interesting symbolism with all these things. But we coined the term overjaw effect because here you have Branson. Now on the front of this plane, you have a goddess like splayed out across the front of it. So you have all this like comic book like goddess imagery. Virgin, Virgo, clearly it's all goddess worship. Now it's escorted up into the sky by the White Knight 2. So you have twin towers it goes up. So again, it is an eye if you look at the Virgin, but it's also a corona or an eclipse. Not a coincidence. But I want to point this out. He brings all these women up there on purpose, I believe. And when they reach the edge of space, they all open their mouths absurdly wide and they start squealing and flying around like basically in a state of ecstasy. And if you look at the whole flight, you'll see what I mean. It's part of this ritual dramatization of conception. Basically, it is SpaceX, and that's pretty much the reason why the mass media was collectively laughing at Jeff Bezos' rocket and drawing your attention to it, because 1969 was a ritualistic, with the moon landing, it was a ritualistic conception of the new age, and here, or the space age, and now we're going into the space tourism, and it was just another one of these major fertility rites for the masses, and they had to ensure that everybody got it, even if they don't know. Even if they don't know. Now, if you look at the flight path of the Virgin Galactic plane, I think it's hilarious that once it gets up into space, its two wings that look like legs just kind of go up, like behind its ears. It's just, I'm sorry. It's just, this whole thing is absurd, but I didn't make this up. I'm not a part of their mystery Babylon fertility rite sex cult. And what they're worshiping with their god of recycling, Osiris, is probably the cycles of life and death and reincarnation. But there were some interesting things this year in particular. For one, the Virgin spaceship that went up there on 7/11, the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling, was the VSS Unity 22. There's a lot of numerology here. There really is. I don't want to bog you down. But 7/11, and of course the Skylab that fell was 77 tons. 77, if you look at what Jack Parsons, and this is, I'm just going to go into this one thing. When Jack Parsons was hanging out with Aleister Crowley and they're doing this ritual to invoke the Antichrist, they had this star, or what they called the Seal of Babylon. And if you look at the Seal of Babylon, it's a 7-pointed star, but it has like 7 sevens on it, on each side. So I don't know what it all means, but it's consistent symbolism with Virgin Galactic and these dates, and it's constantly repeating. So you have Unity 22, Virgin goes up there, launches on 7/11. Shortly after this, you have Gabby Petito, 22-year-old, disappearing, if you remember that story. And this entire summer, the number 22 was very much a big part of the metascript, and I'll go into all of the different instances. I have it on my blog, but these things aren't disconnected. The events on the ground, the events in the sky, it's all interconnected. Travis Claus says, Happy New Year. Oh yeah, for where you're at. 3 minutes in, I can tell we're going to kick ass this year, he says. Brojetta says, celebrating the dog star. Yep. That's exactly it. Lean Dion says, it's the Esoteric Mile High Club. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're seeing here. But, we're not wrong. And we'll have to go through all these different connections. You'll find some interesting connections between Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, and this group in Laurel Canyon, a literary club we're at the house of Robert Heinlein, who wrote Stranger in a Strange Land, about a guy who grew up on Mars coming back to Earth. Now here you have Richard Branson doing the white power symbols, the AOK with each hand. Donald Trump uses this. Some would say it's 666. There's different meanings for it, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure, though, that it's 666 first. The white power thing was added on when the ADL decided to smear Trump for doing this gesture. But I think this is a way of flashing the 33. That's what I think it is. They're all in the club. In fact, if we get into the symbolism with the private space agencies and compare it to NASA, you'll see it's very consistent. Even the use of the number 42 is consistent with all of them. It's not just Musk and his weird obsession with a certain science fiction book. No, there's a deep occult subtext to the space program. All right, let's move on from that. We're just talking about this because it's New Year's and this is the night that everyone celebrates the Dog Star, and it's not the central focus for most people. Or rather, they don't know that, and I wonder. Does it matter that there's this hidden religion that's practiced that we're a part of? Well, I would say, for me, it kind of does matter. I would rather know than not. I want to know what I'm participating in. Let's see. Breaking: CDC confirms the best defense against all variants is $200 billion. And here you have Pope Bezos surrounded by servants. His servants all wear masks. Where he's surfing outside of his $500 million mega yacht. Now I'm bringing this up because in the context of everything else, Don't Look Up, a movie about the Earth as Titanic about to hit an iceberg, and then you have the space junk drama, Musk's space junk threatening China, China and Russia's space junk threatening the ISS. What the problem you're seeing now is, of course, space is crowded and these billionaires are crowding heaven, and they don't care. Does Jeff Bezos care about global warming or space junk? Does he care about sustainability when he's got a $500 million mega yacht and servants and he's just basking in the sun, flexing for the Daily Mail with his pink shorts? No, I'm saying this is storytelling and narrative. And the part of the story here is the space cowboy Bezos. He's playing the role of, with his friends here, of one of the entertained on the Titanic. That's why you got his $500 million mega yacht. So the Earth is the Titanic, just like Don't Look Up, but this guy who should care the most doesn't care. I mean, do you remember when William Shatner came down from space and he goes up to Jeff and he says, it was so profound. The sky went from blue to white, or blue to black, and I hope I never forget what this feels like. And he starts waxing poetic about how profound it was to go to space. And Jeff is like, hold on a second. I want to spray some champagne on the ladies. And then the ladies bring him the champagne and he starts spraying it. And he's like, do you want some? And Shatner didn't want to. He was still thinking about, hey, I just went to space. Well, I think that's all character building as well. So the richest man in Earth, and again, Amazon, what does that represent? I've been saying for some time that the space station represents the Tower of Babel. One language, all the nations of the world, it's the internet, but they're all in one singular mission to go from the Earth into the heavens. So it's like this modern tower, and then you have Jeff Bezos, Amazon, A to Z, all the content, all the books, and he goes up into the heavens. So I think, okay, wait, this is very fascinating, because it seems like there's this Tower of Babel / Titanic. You see the parallel here? Gets too high, falls. Titanic, same thing. It's about hubris. So this guy is the epitome of hubris. Now, if you look at the new Amazon headquarters, they actually have a new headquarters in Washington that looks like, and it says here, the Tower of Babel. Amazon is building the Tower of Babel for the 21st century. It's going to be in Arlington, Virginia. And of course, it literally looks like the Tower of Babel. Right? Out of these medieval representations, Renaissance representations of it. So my point being again, Bezos, the space program, richest man on Earth going into heaven, $500 million mega yacht while the Earth is overheating, Tower of Babel. There's a connection here, a very strong connection. And there's one more. So in the movie 100 that I've been talking about, The 100, so season 1, episode 13 has the space station in that movie fall. Well, here's people ask, what happened in season 100, episode 13? So they're forced underground into this camp. And this might just be a coincidence, but I don't think so. In that episode, if you watch it, when the space station falls, there's a scene where they're in this mountain fortress, and the guy who runs the place collects all kinds of art from the old world from a century before. So he's got great works of people like Van Gogh, etc. Well, he's got the painting of the Tower of Babel. And that painting is in the episode where the space station falls. So again, I could be, well, this is painted. This is the one from, I'm trying to find the year on it. There's a few different artists that have painted this thing. 1563 on a wooden panel. Peter Bruegel the Elder. Very famous representation. But again, I'm saying, the space popes are all there to help tell this story. I don't believe that any of them are going to space. You're not going to space, even if you have $28 million. Restless Bear says, Happy New Year, everyone. Jenna says, sleeping with the ex. David A. Pryor, Shatner didn't want Bezos to spray on him. Yeah, I thought that was an example of how it wasn't profound. It was all just bogus, and it was all just acting, but it might have been intentional to show, hey, this guy's more interested in selling tickets. AA-AA says Bezos is LARPing hard. Right. Bezos is LARPing. I think so. They're not the best actors. When he was up in space with Wall-E Funk, her name is Wall-E. Look, let me show you one more example. He was up in space and they were just throwing Skittles in each other's mouths. I'm like, that's weird. You're up there, you have God's eye view, you're looking at the earth and all we've done to it, and the first thing you do is you start throwing Skittles into each other's mouths. Well, there's a 2008 Pixar film called Wall-E, another film about space arcs. And this is about a world covered in junk and then abandoned. So there's a flood of trash. So Noah is warning us about the flood. Not the biblical Noah, but the modern Noah. And he's warning us that if we don't cut back, there's going to be a flood and it's going to destroy everything, and it's being caused by the capitalists. Well, in the movie Wall-E, which is meant for children, the humans destroyed the world and they're constantly ripped on, humans are bad, etc. We covered it in trash. And Wall-E's there to pick up the mess. So anyway, this movie makes much of the number 113. It's encoded into the movie. It's even encoded into the title. I think if you flip it, you get 311, 113. They do this stuff on purpose and consciously. And in this movie, they actually had something called Directive 113, where the president puts a gas mask on and he says it's time to abandon the planet. Very consistent with their numerology and their themes. So in this movie, though, the human beings are in a space arc, probably engaging in cannibalism without knowing it. Another side note. But they're in this space arc while the world gets cleaned up by robots. So the robots are like a slave class. And they got to fix what the capitalists did. And they're serving the capitalists like servants in space. So this is all just communist revolutionary subtext, meaning the capitalists are oppressing and destroying the world. And they've enslaved all these other nations and the other people of the world who aren't as privileged or whatever. And so the movie is basically ripping on capitalism for the most part, while reintroducing this Noah's Ark scenario. And here's how deep they go with the Noah's Ark scenario. The way that they know that they can go back down to the earth, because Noah was alerted by a dove. Well, in this movie, it's a robot that looks like a dove. And the robot that looks like a dove finds a plant and puts it inside of the compartment in her chest, and she flies up to the ship to say it's safe to go back down to the earth. So it's quite literally a retelling of the whole flood myth. They're very disingenuous about it, though. Disney when they're conditioning your youth using these ancient archetypical stories, biblical narratives, but repackaging it for a communist new age. So when the humans come back down to the earth after this flood of trash is abated, they decide that they're going to become farmers. So they give up their technology, they pick up farming implements. So it's an agrarian communist revolution post reset. Just like in 100 on Netflix, when they come down from their space ark, this orphan train from space, they immediately have to learn how to farm and how to hunt. So they turn their back on the old lifestyle that brought about their destruction. But again, it's called Wall-E, and if you look into it, there are scenes that are wildly inappropriate for children because they get into this whole, quote, space sex thing when they, the Earth is about to be repopulated. And before it happens, there's a scene where Eve, who, when she closes herself up, she looks like an egg. She's floating around in space with Wall-E on a date, and he's spraying her with a fire extinguisher. And it's barely even disguised. It's all innuendo, like you would expect from Disney. They're always inserting things. And now we know why. Because the subconscious mind misses nothing. I think that's one of the meanings to Kubrick's work. Eyes wide shut. I think that they know that even though your conscious mind doesn't know, doesn't understand, doesn't perceive, the unconscious is absorbing it all for programming purposes. So it doesn't matter if you know or don't know, if you're half awake or not. The thing is, you're absorbing it with your mind's eyes wide open. Even though, again, it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in it. I think that we're all part of this energy extraction matrix, and we're all feeding that black cube monolith, whether it's a TV set or your phone screen. I mean, there's no other way to describe this. We are definitely taking part in some kind of mass collective, whatever this is. You could say religion, you could say a cult that has hijacked the world, but it's always been here, if you ask me. I don't think it's new. The New World Order, kind of a misnomer. It's the Old World Order with a new paint job. All right, let me see. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. Tomorrow we'll get back into the Denver shooter. The Ghislaine Maxwell story, so far, big nothing burger, everything sealed. Did anybody expect anything different? Yesterday we talked about a new movie called Licorice Pizza, and this Pizzagate Massacre, a couple movies, if anybody has time to check those out. China is going to build a mile-long spaceship, which happens to be the length of the spaceship in the movie Event Horizon. Just another example of if you've seen it in science fiction, they're probably going to introduce it in real life. I mentioned how the MAGA band Vanilla ISIS, the white Al-Qaeda, has replaced the old terrorists of the previous major PSYOP, generational PSYOP, the post 9/11 era. You no longer have those guys, but now the airplanes are shut down by masked Karens. And last week this video went viral of a masked Karen attacking a passenger. Turns out it was a Baywatch actress. So any of these stories that go mega viral and divide people and get people to take sides, especially around the holidays, are already suspect. But yeah, it's probably an actor. All right, let's see here. Lean Dion says, so true, they got back amped to dig holes and plant potatoes. Oh yes, in the 100. And that's what you're going to do on Mars. On Mars, you're either going to be a potato farmer or you're going to be making candy for Boring Candy, Elon Musk's candy company. You'll be like an Oompa Loomp working for Willy Wonka. And I think that's the joke. I think that's the joke. When I said that Elon Musk is based on Willy Wonka, that's because he made that connection himself. He purchased Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder's home. Elon Musk owned Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory actor's house in Los Angeles. Why? Because he is right now living the life of the Willy Wonka himself. His life is actually following the same plot. He's this eccentric, rich guy with a tunneling company. That's what Musk is. And he's starting a candy company. But anyway, what is Musk doing that's any different than Willy Wonka? Hyperloop. I think the Hyperloop might actually be how they're going to successfully stage space travel. And of course, some will say, well, how could you fake space travel if you're just going fast in one direction? Well, easy. Conveniently, in the last couple of years, scientists have discovered these things that they call arches of chaos or space manifolds, where they say that they can actually send you in a straight line across the galaxies. It says here, astronomers have known about these pathways, arches of chaos, to navigate the celestial neighborhood. A new study has revealed a new shape in these manifolds that form an ornamental structure that evolve over decades. So what it's suggesting here is that we have a superhighway network that if you know how to access it, it's not a wormhole like in the movies, but it says here, you can travel through the solar system much faster. It says they could send spacecraft to the far reaches of our planetary system fast. And this is published in November of 2025. Researchers discover a new superhighway system, a celestial autobahn, that will act over several decades as opposed to hundreds of thousands of millions of years that usually characterize solar system dynamics. So instead of taking years to get to Mars, it'll be like a Disneyland ride. It'll be like a Hyperloop. And again, is it a coincidence that Musk and Branson are both deeply invested into Hyperloop, into digging tunnels? Like, I really do think that deep space is quite literally deep underground. And Musk's role in angering China, Elon Musk faces backlash in China after Beijing's complaint against SpaceX. You can see how he's also playing into the Star Wars narrative. Now, when stuff starts falling from the sky, all of you here know what's real and what isn't, but most people don't. Also, well, heads up, this is from satview.org. You can actually follow real time. Real time, it says, according to a forecast made at satview.org, an object will be re-entering at the above coordinates. So you can find forecasts for re-entry of space junk. A couple other things other than the worship of the dog star tonight and preparation for 2022. This article came out in the Washingtonian yesterday about a civil war in America. And it was a guy who created 5 hypothetical situations on how America will end. And I didn't read the whole article. I mean, everything he wrote. He put out these, like, it's pretty lengthy, but the first part really caught my attention. What he says here is, the breaks keep happening. The quote, crack up is not an event. It's a series of events, which is exactly how the Civil War happened. He used the phrase crack up. And those of you following this channel know that we've been really keen to keep an eye on the forced memes. And ever since 11/3 and the election, and even before that, the word kraken, crack, have been forced memed into the public's consciousness, like Hunter Biden and his crack pipe. And all of it is theater. You know, Hunter Biden and Fox News, Tucker Carlson are BFFs in real life. Just a heads up. So when he's saying, hey, this guy's crack pipe should delegitimize his father's run for the presidency, yeah, it's all just made for TV beef. It's not real. But anyway, you had Sidney Powell, the Kraken. Then you had Mike Lindell, the crack smoker, trying to undo the election. Then you have this crack smoke. I mean, I'm telling you, the whole year, even the space station had a crack in it. The symbolism of the Seattle Kraken, the hockey league team, all these things were being pushed at the same time. And it all connects to the date 113, election date, and this idea of there being a civil war. In fact, the other day we were talking about this crack in the Liberty Bell and how it's interesting that there's a few things about that. It happened in 1846, so they say. We are looking into numerology and this idea of there being a schism or a crack. And it's also noteworthy here that Derek Chauvin knelt on Floyd, 8:46. 8:46 is the time that 9/11 started. So what could you say about 9/11 and the Chauvin versus Floyd event? Well, these are both events that were part of this crack-up, schisms. These are partisan psyops. And we're constantly seeing these partisan psyops, things that are designed to split things in two. That's why we have these polarizing characters that are juxtaposed so that we have to choose sides. Team Greta, Team Kyle. Team Vax, Team Needle. All right, going through some comments here before we go. Same time tomorrow, same place. I want to say thanks very much to Not Cute for the generous donation there. We have super chat enabled to keep this channel going. And really, we're on DLive, so that's another problem solved there. We're monetized on DLive, and it's all just maintenance. We do have things that we have to keep going, and this channel has been under relentless assault by YouTube snowflakes who get offended by everything that we say. But soon it won't matter. One of the reasons why I introduced Fake World News is that I decided, we need to have something to keep everything afloat no matter what goes on in the world. And if they shut down the internet, what could be better than a print publication? So if you haven't read number 1, you can get it now along with number 2. Go to fakeworld.news, and you can also get these at darkmatter.radio. Now it's technically 2022 where most of you are now, but remember, it's always 1984, always has been, always will be. This is COVID-1984 by Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms. Have a great night. Thanks to the callers. See you all in the chats tomorrow.
Or deceit. Shut up, shut the door. Government media bent you over like a whore. COVID-19.